Well, good afternoon, everybody. I think I'll get started now. First thing I want to do is thank you very much for choosing this session. I'm actually very flattered. There's a tremendous host of options, and I know there's 2 or 3 that I would have liked to have gone to. So I really, really appreciate that. I'm excited about the overall theme of the conference, Agents of Change, and I think it ties in nicely with the conversation that I'll be sharing with you this afternoon and hopefully having with you around knowledge mobilization, because I am convinced that we are all mobilizers and all agents of change. Before I get into the conversation, we'd like to acknowledge Deborah sitting at the front. Deborah's providing any French interpretation services. If anybody is looking for clarification or would like to ask any questions in French, please let her know, be it now or throughout. My presentation is going to go through and talk about the how and why of knowledge mobilization, but I assure you it will start with what. Saddled working within a unit that doesn't have an intuitive term. It probably took me about 2 to 3 years to work out the elevator pitch. But it's really exciting work. I think it's directly relevant to the work that you're involved with in the field of adult literacy. And the other thing, 2 other things quickly is I'd really like to try and make this as participatory as possible. So if there are questions, please just let me know and I'll field them throughout. And secondly, I give you my word, we will be done by 4:55. Even if I have to stop mid-sentence. So there's 5 things that I'm going to be looking to cover off. The first one is a little bit of context about who I am and what's my story. I don't know anybody that grows up wanting to be a knowledge broker yet. And like a lot of my colleagues that are starting to do this kind of work, we all have taken a bit of a side door approach to it. So I'll speak briefly about that. I'll spend some time discussing exactly what is knowledge mobilization, focusing more so around why it's important, what services are available, what are the opportunities for yourselves, and how can you get involved. But my story, I started working in adult literacy in 1990 or 91. And someone asked me today if I started when I was 12, and I wish I could remember who that was because I got to put them on my Christmas card list. But I just finished university and had the pleasure of working in program delivery within the native stream, based out of Hamilton for about 7 years. And I absolutely loved it. And so I've got a real appreciation for the work that you do, the challenges that you face, but more importantly, probably the opportunity that it has to make a real difference. And that's why I said at the beginning that I really do believe we're all mobilizers, because we're sort of that intermediary between the learner or learners within a program, or even more broadly, communities, supporting a community development process. And we broker between an individual's learning program, perhaps health needs, family needs, employment needs. There's a lot of balls that you're collectively juggling with regard to the work and the challenges you have, and that's in addition to administrative responsibilities. So I did that work for 7 years and absolutely loved it. And the real bridge to where I am today was around the mid to late 1990s when the province was developing an Ontario literacy research strategy. And I was very fortunate to be selected to be on a province-wide committee to help shape and formulate this strategy. And I was starting to develop a real interest around research. The practice the work I was doing in Hamilton, there were a lot of challenges in integrating some of the holistic programming components within the Ministry of Training, Colleges and Universities framework. So I was excited about making some contributions and noticed there were a number of academics around the table. Well, I was concurrently excited and a little bit nervous, feeling that what they were bringing to the table with their credentials was probably had a lot more meaning, a lot more cachet than my experience. And it was the very first meeting that challenged a lot of my assumptions, because it was probably inverted. They were extremely interested in the work that I was doing, the cultural stream that I was working within, and the questions that I was bringing to the table, which led me to believe that maybe there's an opportunity for me. Fast forward a few years, I actually went back to Trent University and pursued a graduate degree, looking at policy implications for Native literacy in Ontario. And it was that 10 to 12 year process that gave me the confidence to apply for a brand new position at York University 5 years ago, managing a knowledge mobilization unit. Not knowing exactly what the heck it was, but seeing that they were looking for somebody that could be an intermediary between academic research, community research, as well as community decision making. And it's been an absolutely fantastic experience. Certainly a lot more so when my mom told me when I was 3 that I wanted to be the guy that cleaned the streetlights. And now I'm afraid of heights, so that wouldn't have been a good career move. But it's been a lot of fun. And for me, the last 2 days, to be able to come back and reconnect with people that I've worked with for almost 20 years, but to build some new relationships and see where that goes within my capacity at York. All right, so I'm a knowledge broker, and exactly what the heck does that mean, and what is knowledge mobilization? I'm not a big fan of the term, but it is what it is. I've got a slide up here that shows a little bit of work that Dr. Deborah Pepler is doing at York University. She's a recognized leader in bullying and leads a rather large national sort of network that deals with healthy relationships and promoting the elimination of violence. In fact, it's just become kind of known as the bullying network. She has an incredible capacity to engage non-academic stakeholders in all levels of education, as well as other researchers, both academic and community-based across Canada, to develop a rich and comprehensive research agenda that asks the critical questions. The research itself flows directly to those community decision makers and to those policy makers in formats that they can digest, utilize, and help implement into good practice and good policy. I'm convinced that every university in Canada has people like Deb Pepler. I believe that. So the work that Dr. Pepler is doing is essentially knowledge mobilization. So the work itself is not new. I don't have a parallel slide, but I'm sure some of you in this room, and I don't want to single out Joanne Cottery at CLO, but I will. I know that CLO has really good capacity around engaging research to inform their decision-making processes. And I'm sure some of you are in that situation as well. Now, maybe you would like more capacity, maybe you would like the abilities to really be able to synthesize and put it into practice, yet there are people out there that have those skill sets and the abilities to make the connections and draw the information that they need to make it work for them. The point being that this really isn't anything new. In fact, early on in this decade, the former president of the University of British Columbia was speaking about the fact that there's a really strong need for this kind of work. It's important that we translate our research findings in the human sciences into public policy and social programs. Understanding that in universities all across Canada, there's been a parallel process within science and technology for years. Within social sciences and humanities, it's often revolved around the skill of the individual researcher or maybe a faculty or a unit. Yet what we're looking to do at York is expand that university-wide. So I'm curious to know a show of hands before today, who has heard of the term knowledge mobilization? Okay, that's actually pretty good. Perhaps you may know knowledge transfer or knowledge transfer and exchange. And there's a whole host of them now. I actually could probably run right off the page with all the terminology. And I won't get into the conversation about the fact that there's so many terms, yet at the basis of all those terms is the notion of a two-way exchange between researchers and decision makers. And that's really, really important, because it is not just a matter of taking things that are going on at the university and effectively pushing those out. It's creating capacity and processes to engage decision makers outside of the university. The objective of the work that I'm involved with is to maximize the impact of research. And that term is intentional. It's not just academic research, it's community research as well. Here's the theory slide. Now, I like the colors, but it's a theory slide. And if you're not a big fan of theory, this is a picture of Newfoundland, and this is my colleague out of Memorial. This is his backyard. So you can kind of daydream for a while I go back, talk about the theory slide for a little bit, because what we have developed around the outside is a suite of services and activities that facilitate this knowledge mobilization process. And the boxes on the top left and the top right are a little bit more traditional. Producer push, researchers at the university taking what they've done and pushing it out to a relevant audience, be it in an appropriate manner or not, but just getting the information out there. The orange box on the right is user pull. So it's a mechanism for community leaders and decision makers to reach in and access relevant research and information. What we've really tried to build is the capacity to support that green circle. That's the exchange part. That's the kind of roll up your sleeves, let's get our hands messy, let's explore joint research agendas, let's explore opportunities to take research findings and translate them into a format that is effective for yourselves. And all of these services around the bottom help support that. It's that co-production model that also spokes out into partnerships and community-based research. I'll focus on some of the services a little later on in the presentation. Are there any questions right now, though? It's beautiful. It's just beautiful there. It is awesome. So I'll move on to why is knowledge mobilization important? I just love this because I've sat in on some of these. So we're going to talk about information sharing, but you really can't talk right now. It's just going to be me, me, me. At the end of the day, it's about making a difference. And that sounds pretty idealistic and lofty. I think it is, but I also think there's some tangible steps to that. Our objectives are to help to make that difference, provide the capacity to support this in the areas of public policy and professional practice. And I'll share a couple stories around that, because what we did when we started our service unit about 5 years ago, one of the services we offered was seminars. We wanted to bring in experts that had the skills and were able to do this kind of work. And we brought in the Deputy Minister of Education with the province of Ontario, Dr. Ben Levin, who's now with the University of Toronto. And we asked him to talk for 1 hour about the relationships between research and policy. And it was a fantastic talk. We actually have some clips available on our website, and I'll show the link to the website later on for you. But he was very honest, he was very candid, saying that the process is not linear, it's not easy, and with regard to influencing public policy, it's important to understand two things. Relationships. Develop a credible relationship with your policy partners. And second, understand the host of other variables that are at play. I know from experience how important your work is. I respect that, and I'd like to be able to support that. Yet, the policy-making process boils down to a whole host of priorities that land on ministers' plates, and research and sort of the social development is one